Welcome to episode 39 of Out of Bounds, a podcast where I give my social commentary on different topics in today's society. I'm your host, Terry, and today talking about my journey or my life with depression, I guess. Important to start off by saying, of course, I'm not a trained doctor or any of that stuff. This is me speaking from my perspective, and I understand that there's many types and forms of depression, and then also people experience it in very different ways. So this is in no way to say that my experience is the vast majority or a small minority or anything. It's just what I've been through. Of course, also speaking to people that I've talked to and some professionals that have told me things, but again, I'm not a professional. Depression, the thing about it for me, or maybe I'll get to that later. So I'll just start with my own experience. So I would say it started in 7th grade, and I actually vividly remember just because I have a memory like that. There's a song, not really by Tupac and Biggie, but I don't know who made it, but they mixed Tupac and Biggie together called Running, Dying to Live. And one of the lyrics in the chorus was something just basically like, I wonder if they'll laugh when I'm dead. And that song was good, but that line stuck with me. So 7th grade, I'm 12? And so that was one of the first times I thought about my mortality, I would say. Didn't know so at the time, but it really just, it kind of took over everything I was thinking about. Not forever, just probably for like a day or two. But I was just really found myself in deep contemplation over the next day or so. Like when I was in class, I was kind of distracted, just anything. Of thinking like, wow, well, I never thought about it. What will people say when I die? It's like I knew I was going to die at that age. I understood, death, but it was just like, I never thought about what people would say, like, or that, life goes on. To me, I guess I always kind of saw it like a movie. I see the world through my eyes. And so when the movie's over, it's all over. But in truth, everything continues on. At least that's what we believe. So, that was just one of the times I was just like, man, what will people think about me when I die? Or like, would people be happy when, or not happy, but would they still continue to be happy? Will life still go on and all these different things? And keep in mind, to this point, I've known a lot of people that died, not like personally, but I've been to a lot of funerals, just kind of, what it was. And again, not people close to me, but I seen how people react. I know people die. I know that life goes on, but it was just like, what about when I die though? So anyway, I think that was a gateway to the thought of, well, maybe people will appreciate me more when I'm dead because they will realize what's gone and what they missed out on while I was here. And again, it's not something I fixated on very long in 7th grade, but I vividly remember that was the first time I really started having that thought pattern. And so I had that throughout, since into high school. And then high school, I felt those moments more where it kind of hits you. And again, I don't know how people, the majority experience depression, but for me, it definitely hits kind of like a wave, like a huge wave of just negativity and sadness kind of that just hits you. And it doesn't like make you bawl out uncontrollably, or at least for me, it just really stopped me. Like literally, it just stopped me in my tracks, whatever I was doing, whatever I was thinking. And I would just get fixated on kind of these morbid thoughts sometimes, or I would get fixated on just negative thoughts. And so in high school, like I said, there were plenty of good times. I loved high school. No real issue with people. It was just sometimes it would hit me and I just be like, I want to run away and, never come back. I was really fixated on this idea of the attention it would bring, and, people kind of not respecting you, but people kind of taking a second look and being like, okay, I was wrong. And those thoughts hit me sometimes whenever I was having an argument with someone, or someone I was in a relationship with, or things with family or whatever. But honestly, there were many times where it doesn't take any trigger. Sometimes I feel like people will be like, just, what causes it? And it's like not always really a cause. It just happens. Again, it's like a wave. It just, there's a cause to a wave, but it's just a natural flow. It hits you out of nowhere. And so, that hit the apex in senior year, where I really found out about my depression, and that was in the form of suicidal thoughts. And so again, it was kind of a natural progression at that point, where I've had these morbid thoughts of, just how would people react when I'm not here, or if I just disappear and all these things, they appreciate me more. And then it started to get to a point of, well, I don't even want to be here anymore. And it was precipitated by a relationship breakup, and kind of what people think of when they say high school love drama and all this stuff. And it's just like, you see these teenagers sometimes on TV shows or whatever, and it's just like, I'm gonna die. I can't believe they don't love me, or I'll just die if they don't say yes, and all this stuff. But it wasn't that, truthfully. It really was just my mental disorder. And so the thing about it is that, yeah, in hindsight, I could say it was definitely bigger than, or I was making it bigger than it actually was as far as the relationship. But it was at that time a trigger to put it to a new level. And so the suicidal thoughts, it was yeah, pretty standard to, like I was saying before about the morbid thoughts. But then it was the suicide attempts. It was like it became a real thing, where it's just, it's a piling on effect for me, where it's this one negative thought, like you aren't good enough to keep your girlfriend or whatever. But then that piles on to all these other negative thoughts, these other things that you've been thinking about, and it just becomes that compounding effect. And to the point where you start justifying and rationalizing to yourself, like, okay, well, it'd be better if you weren't here. And not just better for you, but better for everybody else too. And that's, to me, kind of the worst part of it, where you feel like you're helping people by removing yourself. And the thing is, some people, especially if you haven't gone through it, they'll just be like kind of confused. Like, I don't understand how you could get to that thought pattern. But you realize that the brain's a powerful tool. Most of us rationalize and justify every second, of the day. And there's so many things, and you see people with addictive behaviors, or people that have constant issues with relationships and things. And it's like, how can you continue to do the same thing over, knowing what the result is? And that's because our brains are wired that way, to justify our standpoint. And so it's no different with depression. It was a thought that you have that you continue to justify why you would want to do something like that. And so that was the catalyst, I would say. It wasn't the cause, it was the catalyst to push something that was already there. And so for me, I think the weirdest part is that is invisible, which we all know, but back then it was more invisible, because now it's kind of a rallying cry around mental health issues, and I'll get to that later. But at the time, it really was just a very, you need to figure that out yourself. Like, that's just you being crazy, or that's you being dramatic, and all these different things. And so people didn't really understand what it is. And to an extent, they still don't. And so the reactions that you would get, not that I was telling people, but the reactions that you would get to some of your behaviors, again, people would just dismiss it or justify it as something else. And that was kind of the weird part, because even though I was like justifying my thoughts, I knew in the back of my head it was a cry for help. It was something to get attention from other people. And so when you realize that you're doing these things, you're acting out, and just nobody is noticing, or nobody like actually believes it, that was kind of the craziest part. Now, it's not like I was running up and down the halls asking for help. That's not how it really goes. It's just kind of these actions you do. Like I said, you just kind of draw attention to yourself. And yeah, nobody really picked up the signs, and that was interesting to me, I would say, to look back on it. But then eventually I remember my one of my counselors, or no, she was my counselor, but I was a counselor's aide, so I worked with all the counselors. But she was my particular counselor, and she was the counselor for all my family because we had the same last name, of course. And so she noticed eventually. She had noticed the behavior and kind of the scarring too, because then I got into body mutilation as well. I got into body mutilation to make up for the fact that I couldn't commit suicide or go through with it. I wanted to, I attempted, but I didn't go through with it or have a successful one. So that's kind of where I turned to, where it was very much like I felt numb, so to speak. And it's just kind of like an overwhelming amount of feeling. And you feel so much, you think so much, you got all this going on that eventually it feels like you become numb. And so this pain that you feel inside, or you think is inside, you're not actually feeling the physical pain to match. And so to me, it was more of a punishment type thing. Like, I don't like myself, but it was also a kind of, I'm trying to feel something. And so anyway, this counselor, she noticed the scars, and like, it was clear as day. And at first I had freaked out because, like, again, it's hard to explain, but it's a wave of influence. Not quite like being drunk. If you could get drunk in a flash and it goes away, it'd be like that. And so it's a wave of influence where you push through and you do these things. And later on, at least for me, when I like came back down to earth, I'm like, why did I do that? So I'm like wearing long sleeve shirts when it's hot, all this stuff. Eventually, I just started kind of letting it out again for that tension. Wearing regular shirts, the scars out, the scars, and nobody really said anything. I even had a teacher that made a joke about it, but that's a whole different thing. So anyway, this counselor was just like, I noticed this. I noticed your behavior. You can talk to me what's going on. And I told her, like, again, I wasn't really fighting it. I was just waiting for somebody to notice. And so, like, I told her, and it felt like a relief, but it felt weird because it was just like, at least for me, I was a top student. I was a good student. Good grades, active, all that good stuff. So it just felt like it was senior year too. I'm getting ready to go to college. It's like, you're not supposed to have these problems. These aren't problems that you're supposed to have. And so it felt weird because it was just like, I'm about to completely change my life. Like, I felt like, okay, if this gets out or I admit to it, like, now I can't go to college, or I don't know, my grades for some reason won't be the same, or, I'm on a different path now because I'm somebody dealing with baggage rather than somebody that has it all together. But I didn't really care. I told her, and she told my mom. Like, she called. I didn't want her to do that, but she did. And honestly, the funny thing is, like, my mom was just kind of like, because she was on the phone, so she's just like, I wasn't even really paying attention, but she sounded kind of surprised, and she's talking to the counselor about other family that dealt with it and all this stuff. And the funny thing is, to this day, we never talked about it. From that moment, I'm thinking I'm going home It's going to be a big production. I'm thinking they about to be in my face all the time. They about to be on watch. Nothing. To the moment I'm sitting here, I've never spoke a word about it to my mom or my dad or any of my, family. So it's interesting how that very much changed my perception on it, because I very much felt like invisible to a point where, not that I was invisible, but it's just like the things that my issues were invisible to people, and people not really noticing, me acting different or any of that added to it. And then when my mom did it, it was just, okay, that is what it is. And from that moment, I just said I had to deal with it. I had to learn how to cope, and go about my life. And it was tough senior year, but I got to a good point. But it continued to happen definitely through college. And again, senior year of college is when it got real bad, real bad. But, I would say college, not a whole bunch, but there are times I dealt with it, very much so. And I remember going to student counseling for that. And, there's it's private, it's free, all this good stuff. And I just remember, the counselor just was so nonchalant about it. It just kind of we didn't really accomplish anything. It was just kind of tell me something. And I'm like, okay, I'm telling her, but then it's just she had no response, no nothing. I mean, I didn't know what I expected. I didn't expect a magic bullet where she's just going to well, do this and you're fixed. But it was just I thought, these, counseling therapy would be more talking, and, but it was just kind of she was well, what do you want? What do you want me to do about it? And I was just what? And so, at the time, it was just okay, that's counseling. That's out of the picture. But it could have just been very much she wasn't a good counselor. And that's one of the things that you don't know, or that's not well publicized, is that if it doesn't work with one person, you can continue to try, because what they'll tell you is that you have to find the right counselor that you feel open with and that you feel a trust and connection with, in order to make progress. And sometimes it takes a while. We're all different. Some people, can find 5 different people they connect with. Some people only have one person out of the 100. And so it takes a while. I didn't really know that. So I just kind of shut that down after that. And that was junior year. So at that point, I really, cause it was tough, but it was manageable. And I was you know what? I'm here. I got all these resources at college. Let me try this. I tried it. Didn't work. So then I was back to self-coping. And yeah, I won't really get into that part of it, but it was me taking care of my feelings my way, which weren't exactly healthy. And so then we get to senior year, and it hit hard. It hit more often, I should say. It always hit hard, but it hit more often. And then once I graduated, I was in a good place the first year. And then once I went out on my own, I was in the city. It happens, not frequently, but, occasionally. And the thing is, as I get older and deal with it more, yes, it's a lot easier to deal with. I would never ever think I'd be suicidal again. I mean, I don't know, but I don't ever think I would be. I feel so far removed from that, especially when understanding why I was feeling that at the time, to the point where I wanted to do something about it. There's going to be times you think about it, but the point where I wanted to do something, tried to do something about it, was only because I was approaching it from a very selfish lens. And understanding and being able to call myself out when those feelings come up, I can now manage that. And also just appreciating and recognizing things you do have in life. But overall, yeah, it's just, I realize as an adult, it's going to hit me. And sometimes it's really tough. And it's really tough with other people to deal with, because it's just like a roadblock. Sometimes, and I'm telling, in the middle of a conversation or whatever, sometimes it just hits. and I feel overcome with negative. And I always think like of some cartoon or superhero thing where, you know, it's like white and then the black darkness starts to creep on them. That's kind of how it is. Except it's just like someone threw a paint can on you instead of a creep. And so it just, for me, it just hits. And so now I'm not like completely out of it, but for the most part, I'm just like introspective now. Now I'm just thinking a lot. I don't feel like talking. I don't feel like hearing my voice. I just want to think. And usually the thoughts are kind of negative. It's just like, I could be having a good conversation, but then it'll turn into, well, oh man, remember you didn't get this, or remember you didn't get a chance to do that, or remember that one person, they never called you back. And it's just like a negative Nancy friend in your head, just kind of pulling you down. And in those times, I just want to sleep, just rest. I won't do anything. It's just it's like someone turns a switch off. It's literally, that's how it is. It's like someone turns the switch off and you don't want to do anything anymore. And, you could exacerbate the problem, like you start drinking or something like that, or, you know, you get into a dark room and you just by yourself with your feelings. Then you could get real sad. You can start crying and all that. But if you're just kind of, okay, let me go about my normal routine. I know I'm feeling sad right now, but let me go about my normal routine. You just realize you don't have any zest or energy for anything. And so it just pretty much hampers you. It doesn't stop you, though. And that's one thing I want to get into. I mean, talking about my journey is my journey, but the one thing I want to, it's disheartening a little bit to see where we are in society, where mental health has just become like a badge of honor. And not to say that you should be ashamed of it or anything, and maybe I'm using the wrong word, but people just claim it like it's cool. It's the same thing I feel that happened with LGBTQ identities. It's just like, okay, it's cool for me to say pride and put on the rainbow. It's cool for me to say I have mental health issues and exclaim it to the world. And it's fine to recognize it. It definitely should be acceptable to talk about it. But the thing I fear and the thing that I know I see is that some people use it as a crutch. And that happens with a lot of things we have in life. People want to use it as a crutch. And I will say, like, yes, it takes maintenance, but it does not exclude you. Again, it hampers, definitely in certain ways, sometimes more than others, but it does not stop you. And so there's some people that use depression, and they don't actually. I don't know if they have depression, but from what I can tell, especially people I talk to closely or people that, you know, I work with, from what I can tell, it's symptoms of depression, but it's not depression. And again, a medical professional might tell you you could be on the spectrum with depression. I don't know, but clinically depressed, the way I am, the way people are that I know, people aren't. They're like, oh, I nap a lot. These are depression naps. Come on. Like, to me, it's just, it diminishes the people that are actually going through this. And for people that are actually going through it, sometimes it's oversympathized to where they use it as a crutch. It's, oh man, you know, I battle with depression. I can't do this and I can't do that. And I will tell you what, when I first started to understand back then that I was depressed, yeah, there was things I couldn't do. But if you don't continue to grow and push those boundaries, then you're not going to go anywhere. So to think that you feel or you are confirmed that you diagnosed with this type of mental health or any type of mental health, and to say, well, I just can't do this because I have this, that's my baggage. That's not true. You can continue to push. You could get over a lot of things, to be honest. It takes a whole lot of work, but you could get over different things, and not just mental health, but a lot of things. But it takes the work to do it and to push yourself. So, yeah, I'll stop there because I could talk forever about it, but that's just kind of my journey through it. So anyway, go to the comment section if you have any thoughts, similar stories, people been through it, or if you want to express your own issues, go to the comment section, get that conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and until next episode.